Communication. It's one of the cornerstones of most successful farm businesses. But if a farm doesn't have good communication, how can they change that? If a farm family has habits that are really being unhelpful, what might we do as advisors to help them along to make that shift? My name is Patti Durand, and I'm an agriculture transition specialist with Farm Credit Canada. I am one of a team of members from across Canada that works with farm families, and we have been seeing patterns and trends that we'd care to share. In the hundreds of meetings that we've had in the last 3 years, we are getting a really strong sense that farm families, when they think about transition in particular, don't know where to start, they don't know who to talk to, they don't know what questions to ask. And so they kind of get stuck. They're experiencing discomfort. In our meetings with these families, it has been an incredibly meaningful experience for me as an advisor. We can really help. We can really give them the confidence to make the call, to act, to communicate. But at the same time, as meaningful as each meeting is, one family at a time thinking about the scope of Canadian agriculture is like a drop in a ripple in a puddle. It's just so small when we are encountering and have a sense that the issue is so big. So, when our team has a chance to talk to advisors, such as CAFA, and participate with this network and share messages of common trends and pitfalls that we're encountering and propose potential ways that we can improve it, it's really motivating. And so I'm here today to share some ideas and some observations and some potential ways that we think there might be an opportunity to overcome. We all give professional advice and instructions to our clients every single day. And often those messages would be best shared with other members of that farm family that aren't present in the meeting, or they need to be passed on to the involved business party owners. The problem is the message actually being shared? What if it isn't being shared? There's particular asks that we as professionals are giving to our customers that are actually quite sensitive, but we maybe don't consider that in our request. For example, in order to assemble your credit application, all I need is your most recent 3 years of financial statements, as well as the financial statements and or income tax returns for all of the various parties that are involved, or the owners. Now that we've redone your will, we're going to want to make sure that you share your will and your intentions, go over it with your executor and have that conversation. Congratulations, your insurance policy is now set up and your new beneficiary will be your non-farming son, and he'll be receiving $1 million if the insurance policy is claimed. It seems so simple from our side of the desk. We talk about this all the time, and yet for farm families, you have to wonder, is that message actually being shared? It appears to be a risk, and if the message isn't shared, then our fallback as advisors can tend to be, farms need better communication. We can wag our finger and tell them they gotta clean up their act. But if that is the case, are we actually helping? Are there things that we could do differently? To be clear, communication habits in agriculture have evolved and expanded greatly. There was a time not that long ago in which many stereotypical farmers held their cards close, and they're known for being people of few words. Through industry networking, education, off-farm careers, social media, increased diversity, and peer groups, the communication habits in our industry have expanded and improved, both internally and to non-farming community members. They've exploded in a really good way. However, as advisors, when we're sitting across the table from a customer and we sense that there's issues that might be improved by better communication habits, what could we do about it? It's not our family, it's not our business, it's not our expertise to deal with family relationships. From the outside looking in, it might appear that advisors are saying, "Not my problem." which could be true for some. But I actually have a sense that in fact, there's many advisors who see the issues and just aren't really feeling equipped to do anything about it. If you don't actually deal with the issue, will the other advice and value you're attempting to provide even gain any traction if this barrier isn't overcome? I'd like to propose there's a few things that we could all do in order to help farm families open the lines of communication and decrease their risk as a result. Now, why do we care about that? Well, if families are struggling and are experiencing risk to their business, that's a risk to our business too. Plus, at the end of the day, it's the right thing to do. So in all these hundreds of family meetings and experiences and situations, it seems that there's about 4 assumptions that rise to the surface on a regular basis. 4 assumptions that we can make as advisors that I'm going to propose some alternatives to. We assume they understand what we mean. We're speaking clearly, we got our point across, and we can have a misstep if we assume they get it. We can fall into accepting stereotypes and say, that's just how farmers are. And I'll dig into some examples of that and how we might overcome them. We assume our clients know how to communicate. We assume they have the skill set. That same skill set that we spent years with post-secondary education, events, networking, other examples, mentors. We assume our customers have that same skill set, and that might not be the case. And lastly, we assume they have access to resources. For goodness sake, they found us. They knew how to connect with me as an advisor, so therefore they must have a full palette and other options. As I share these suggestions, I would ask you to think about specific situations in your advising business, in your practice, that apply in some of these examples. How might it apply? How might you do things differently? And just acknowledge it and think about maybe moving the dial a bit. Truly, you can take it, you can leave it, you can modify it, but my goal is to give you something that gives you actionable steps, things you can take home and use. So assumption number 1, we assume they understand what we mean. Now, imagine you are speaking to an individual that is speaking another language. We would have no problem with making body language, whatever efforts we needed to make to say, I don't understand you. We would get that message across. We would be unashamed of that. It would not question our intelligence. It was just a clear barrier that we wouldn't be able to understand each other. The problem is that when we are explaining concepts and advice in English with technical language that we are really comfortable with, our clients are much less likely to speak up when they don't understand. Again, it's not a question of intelligence. It just isn't a language they're familiar with. So like the woman in this illustration, they appear to be understanding even when they don't. Each of us builds our own area of expertise, and there's a unique technical language. One example I use on a regular basis, many of you in this audience today will have a very clear understanding of what a state freeze refers to. However, if you are not familiar with the technical definition, those are still English words, and as a listener, you would try to derive what it meant. So, a state, okay, it's probably to do with wills, it's probably got to do with legacy planning and death. And freeze, well, freeze is bad. Freeze is a penalty, freeze is a punishment. You don't want to freeze. That is a really poor interpretation of what a state freeze really means, but an example of how that can be misconstrued when you think you're speaking the same language. If technical language is one level, acronyms are the next. How many times are you listening to a presentation and someone, obviously very comfortable in their topic, will reel off how many acronyms? We can just be more conscious of it. When we're thinking about explaining things, it can be a misnomer to say, well, explain it like you're talking to a 5-year-old, because that's really not our goal. But one analogy I think that makes a lot of sense is explain it as though you're explaining it to your parents and it's something that they're not familiar with. So it's done in a respectful way, but speaking plainly. It can take time for our customers to understand these concepts. I've certainly talked to professionals who said, I did tell the customer this. I've explained this to them. It can take longer than we think it will. A few different things to think about. Can I say this more plainly? Read their face. Is it giving you messages of uncertainty, worry, confusion, blank stares? Watching for those things and checking back with the customer. And last but not least, one really good practice that I've had good luck with is to double check. So explain a concept and then to the customer, you can say, can you say that back to me in your own words just to make sure I've made myself clear? That way, if there is any miscommunication, you catch it right away. And that can be really impactful and make a difference. We can all do well to pause. There are research studies that show that as humans, once we know something, it is very difficult for us to resist sharing it. And we assume the next listener needs it. I'll admit, I can be guilty. I've learned a new insight, and so then the very next customer I sit down with, I want to share it with them. But is this information helpful? Is it deepening their understanding or just demonstrating how much I know by offering a brain dump? We can run the risk of putting our customers kind of in analysis paralysis by overloading them with too much information. So pause and consider, have I been clear? Have I provided enough? I had an experience this morning talking to a husband and wife. The wife has a very large craving for knowledge, and so she's asking lots of questions. But at one point, I could see the look in the video meeting with the customer. His face was that he'd had enough. He was kind of starting to glaze over. And I asked him, I said, are you okay? He's like, yeah, I just kind of zoned out. Perfect. We're going to take a pause. Let's just summarize what we've done, and we'll come back to it another day. I think there's great value in us paying attention to that. Our next assumption that I think we can all fall into is the stereotypical farmer. That's just how farmers are. Some practices that would be unacceptable in any other business that somehow we give a free pass to in agriculture. In this picture, you can see a meeting, but there's an empty chair. How many farms do you know that have a spouse with 50% share ownership of a company, but no voice at the table? It's purely for tax purposes. They're a major stakeholder, but they're not participating or informed about what's happening with the business. With regards to spouses with no voice at the table, we had a survey response following one of our advisory services meetings that illustrated it really well. I have never been an active participant of the farm by my own choice, and in the meeting, points were brought up that I hadn't considered. I was accepted for the role I played or didn't play, and for once I left this kind of a session dealing with the farm and with money without wanting to break into tears. As advisors, are we actually welcoming and inviting stakeholders to the table on a consistent basis? We can be pretty intimidating. Our professional knowledge, our professional fees, even our professional office can really be overbearing at times. And so are we opening up that line of communication and welcoming everybody to be there? Second stereotype, there seems to be a long history, especially in agriculture in rural Canada, of keeping wills secret, only to be revealed after the person has passed away. As many of us know, estate litigation is one of the fastest growing areas of law. So how can we help our customers get ahead of that? Looking at this picture and conflict amongst a team that's working together, can you imagine how dysfunctional your businesses would be if you weren't having regularly scheduled meetings and conversations for planning and just making sure everybody's aligned? Farms are often not meeting. The conversations just aren't happening. How can we help them do that? And last but not least, in our industry, we do a number of things as advisors as value adds. But might those value adds actually be doing a disservice to the customers? Along those lines, annual general meeting minutes are frequently templated by the law office and mailed out to corporations for the shareholders to sign off or their directors to sign off on an annual basis. Honestly, I'm guilty of it myself. My husband and I have an agronomic consulting business, and I can say, get the annual meeting minutes from the law office. Whew, saved us a meeting. What a hassle. Really appreciate that. The purpose of the requirement of that meeting for corporate status is the coming together of the stakeholders and having an intentional conversation for which there's great planning benefits. By not having those meetings, are we actually doing a disservice? I spoke with one law office in rural Saskatchewan, and he estimated that they sent out 150 of these templated minutes every year. Is that something we maybe should be questioning and thinking of a different approach? But rather than worrying about those stereotypes and what we're accepting, what if we changed our expectations? What if we ourselves encouraged and hosted stakeholder meetings? So once a year, whether we're a lawyer, accountant, agronomist, financial advisor, the list goes on, everybody is welcome to the table just to make sure everybody's on the same page. And why should our customers care about this? Because there's great value in making sure that everybody is informed, especially, worst case scenario, if one of the key leaders is incapacitated, making sure that everybody, they don't have to know the answer, but they have to know where to find it. What if we question our client's desire to keep wills secret? I had a client about a month ago now that was quite sophisticated in many ways, in terms of his business structure, in terms of his approach, in terms of his fiscal responsibility, his farm efficiencies, all of these things. But he was struggling to revise his will. He and his wife were working on theirs together. And I asked him, what are the expectations of your children? You have some non-farming children and a farming child. And he said, well, I don't really know. And I said, well, you could ask them. And he said, you can do that? In his life, he'd experienced a number of people passing away, and he's been an executor a few times. So he, in his experience, wills had always been secret, only to be revealed after the person had passed away. We have an opportunity to get in front of this and shift those habits and have encourage transparency amongst families as they're going through this. Sometimes they don't even know that they can share it, and we can set that expectation or readjust it. What if we assumed farm families were having regular team meetings? And by that, I mean our language could be, well, what did you decide at your last team meeting? Or when is your next team meeting? We're not asking them if they're having them. We're not assuming them that they're not having these conversations. In fact, we're assuming they are having these conversations. So much so that if we're all speaking that way as an advisor community, that it can improve those habits and people can step up to the plate and lead that communication for themselves. And last but not least, what if instead of value adding and taking care of communication, such as the annual general meeting minutes, we offer to facilitate those meetings? You know, an AGM can be a really good place for you to do some, rear view mirror look and a forward look for your farm family, and everybody can get aligned and on the same page. Would you like us to host that for you? I can hear it now. We've offered that to our clients. They never say yes. But I think it's a matter of all of us offering it on a consistent basis and opening those doors of expectations. For that one law office in Saskatchewan, even if only 10% of their clients took them up on the offer, that's 15 families that would have an AGM and get ahead of some of the communication barriers that could happen. We assume skill set. We realize that our customers are missing some of these communication skills, but we're not trainers. So if we're encountering that, what else might we do? And I propose we can lead by example and say so. So in customer conversations, I will often say, I'm going to offer you some coaching that I have found works for me and potentially could work for you. When asking a question, don't just ask the question and stop. Ask why or why not. So to go back to our estate freeze example, should I do an estate freeze? Now that you've understood what it means, should I do an estate freeze? Why or why not? The why or why not matters so much because sometimes the response to a question is the law or the rules. But other time, it's just an opinion. If you don't ask the why or why not, you're going to miss the opportunity to really have better information and make an informed decision when the time comes. Another great tip that I share with farm families, especially when they're talking to their children or their business partners about the future of the farm, is asking open-ended questions. When people have the opportunity to just say yes or no, they will. But dig deeper. Tell me more. What do you mean by that? Help me understand. By equipping our farm families with some better language, they can improve their communication and change their story. Another great best practice, talk about CAFA. Talk about your membership in the Canadian Association of Farm Advisors and other professional groups that you participate in. Tell them about the value that you get from networking with peers in the industry and getting new ideas. Tell them about the value of not having to know every answer, but knowing where to find it. Your farm families can benefit from that communication habit as well. I'm also a huge fan of advisory boards. If you have not had the opportunity to sit down with your client with another one of their advisors, I highly recommend it because you get multiple people and their expertise in the room, and a lot of really good work can be done. Customers might resist it because they say, well, that sounds really expensive. But you compare that to the time it takes to go back and forth between professionals and play the game of telephone of attempting to translate to the other person what they said. You get them in the same room, you can move a lot of dirt in a really short period of time. And if you haven't done it as an advisor, I really encourage it. It's super fun. Last but not least, the lady in this graphic you can see is working in front of a whiteboard. I use that on a regular basis as a facilitation tool in meetings, and it's a prescription I give many farms. Get a whiteboard, hang it in your shop, and use it to document team meetings and think about the strategy and the to-do list and making sure everybody's on the same page. Another assumption that we might be tempted to make is that our customers have access to resources. So let's be clear, you are an expert in your field. We spend a lot of time in our area of expertise. As professionals, we're also committed to staying in our lane. Accountants don't give legal advice. Lenders don't offer therapy, even though that's sometimes what customers might need. Let's think about the right time and when we have the right expertise at the table, but also acknowledging when we are not the right person to be talking to a customer. Have you ever had a client reveal a significant problem and you just politely nodded and moved on? Relationship conflicts, lack of financial confidence in decision-making, mental health or addiction struggles. These are just a few examples. What if we all built our own bullpen of professionals that we trust and can send our clients to if we realize that they have a need that we are ill-equipped to serve? What if we don't attempt to solve every problem, but we work to never send a customer away without a solution? We don't want to assume that they need that resource either. But the way that I might phrase it is, I don't know if you need support for this issue, but if that's your story, I have an option that might be able to help. So we can plant a seed. We don't have to push it, but we can help some of our customers from feeling so isolated and helpless, as can happen in rural Canada. So which people might you think would be critical to have in that people resource bullpen? A lawyer with corporate farm structure and tax expertise, an accountant with farm tax and transition expertise, a family counselor, a farm business management consultant, a marketing coach, the number for the mental health hotline, and I'm sure there's many more that you could add. But if we think about how we can improve communication and access to resources for customers, reducing risk, there's no one of us in this industry that can solve this independently. But if we are all singing from the same songbook, some great harmonies emerge. We can really reach out and become a trusted source no matter what problem our customers have. We can take pride in being a connector. You don't have to know every answer, but you could know where to find it. I can think of a number of resources that I have in my toolbox that I share with customers on a regular basis. Podcasts, articles, website links. There's a number of different print materials. Some of them I've been lucky enough to help create. Others our team uncovers through work with networks such as CAFA. I invite anyone seeking customer-friendly farm communication resource links to send me an email, and I'll respond with the links that I share on a regular basis and invite you to do the same. This is another way that we can help our customers with their own communication toolbox, habits, and skill set. So we won't just wish our customers communicated better, but we can provide ways to build those abilities. So as we're helping our customers in their efforts of putting things into words, rather than assuming they understand what we mean, we can check our language. Rather than just accepting that's how farmers are, we can shift our expectations. Rather than assuming they have this skill set and the ability to communicate, we can lead by example. And rather than assuming that they have access to the resources and tools, both people and print or online, we can share those resources. When you're paying attention and helping your customers to improve their communication habits and their business, you become an essential team member. You become the source no matter what issue crosses their path. We can get there, but it really will take all of us. My biggest reward is that you might take some ideas or tips or tricks from this presentation and put it into action in your business. I challenge you to do that, and I welcome ideas and questions. Thanks.
Looking to manage oil and gas development on your property? Since 2009, WellTrax has been a leading provider of oil and gas management solutions. With dedicated software, professional oil and gas administrative support, and more, we specialize in saving our clients time and maximizing income from oil and gas holdings. Get well connected today and learn how our WellTrax team can help you.